Hello and welcome. Are you interested in katanas? Japanese swords? Well, I'm going to show you my experience of finding a World War II katana in my old Japanese house, my Kominka. Last year, before I even bought my house, I had this premonition I would find a katana. I don't know why, but the idea just kind of took root in my mind, and I began to believe that as I went through the house that I would actually find a real katana. On Christmas morning in 2021, I closed on the house, and I left with the keys to my first Akiya, or Kominka. It was unoccupied for about 25 years. A few days later, I made my first visit to the house and began cleaning and going through some of the things that were left behind. The front right bedroom was the only room that was sealed. Many boxes and all sorts of things, newspapers, chests, dressers, clothes, you name it. Everything had been basically put in this one room, and the doors had been closed. It took quite a while, but I went through each item one by one. Between January and February of 2022, I found a variety of treasures. A diamond, hundreds of dollars worth of old coins and bills, manga, art, some old Japanese scrolls, a lot of pre-World War II photographs, and even a 122-year-old Buddhist text from the Meiji period, copied from Edo period texts. The first entry handwritten in 1900. The feeling that I'd find a katana continued and only grew. Near the end of February 2022, as I was getting to the end of my search through the entire bedroom, in the back left corner, the very last chest, was a wardrobe full of many suits. I opened it and I began to sift through what was hanging there and what was in the bottom. In the very back, there was something long wrapped in newspaper. When I first saw it, my heart jumped. I thought, maybe this is it. And then when I grabbed it and picked it up, I immediately knew. I took it out and I went into the other room. I had my camera with me and I actually made a video about it, where I opened it live. So you can actually go back and look at that video if you like. It was wrapped in newspaper and I untied it, and when I opened it, there it was, a brown katana with the sheath and everything in very good condition. I was very happy to find it, and finally, feeling that I'd carried since last year, it came true. And I immediately started talking to some of my friends and my sensei about it, and realized that the very first thing I needed to do, since this was a sharp, real katana, was to find out legally what I was supposed to do with it. But the first thing that I did was email the police and ask them directly what I should do in a situation like this. I explained that I'd bought this house and found this katana. They told me that I should take the katana directly to the station in the same city where I found it, and then they would ask me some questions, they would do an examination, then I could file for an inspection for a possible registration if it didn't belong to anyone else. At that time, maybe I could register it and keep it for myself. So I did as they instructed. I took it to the police station. They examined it, they took pictures, they measured it, and then they gave me a receipt and said that I would be contacted by mail, and then I should take the katana to be inspected. A few months later, I finally received the inspection notification. It had the date, time, and location of the inspection, as well as how much it was going to cost. The total cost, I believe, was around $50 US. On that particular day, I took the katana along with the card, the receipt, down to the sports center in Hiroshima, where the inspection was being held. To my surprise, I was not the only one there. There were many other people bringing in daggers, swords, and even guns. It was pretty interesting. Whenever I talked to the lady who could speak so English, she told me that they would determine if this particular sword could be registered based on two primary criteria. One is the relatively good condition of the sword, meaning that it wasn't burnt badly or broken terribly or in unrepairable condition, which obviously this sword wasn't. And number two, was it made by 100% traditional Japanese mean? In other words, metal folding. A way of making a sword by hand is very strong. You beat the metal down. When you're heating it, you beat it down flat, you fold it, you beat it down again, you fold it. It's really hard work, but it's the traditional Japanese method of making the sword. No machining should be used in the making of the blade. It was determined by their team of experts that my katana that I'd found, had some machining involved in its production process, and therefore they would not register it. Of course, this is disappointing, but what I thought was interesting was that these experts, who I had to pay even though I could not register the blade, didn't know how to pull the katana from its sheath or scabbard. This katana is what you call a gunto, or military sword. The sheath or scabbard, it has kind of catch, a release, and you have to press the button on the sword in order for it to release the blade so that you can draw it out. And the first guy to look at the sword struggled with it for a few moments before figuring it out. And I thought that I was going to have to go over and show him. I just thought it was interesting that these were the experts examining my sword. The result, of course, was that it could not be registered, or rather they would not register it. But I still had to pay the $50 inspection fee. The lady informed me that at that point it was considered an illegal item, and I was advised to bring the blade back to the police station where I had originally reported it to turn it in. Later, I contacted the police station through my sensei in order to be clear in communication, in order to arrange a time to bring it in and also to negotiate other options. The police were actually open to me donating it to a museum that could possibly house it and display it, but after checking around a little bit, I was unable to find one. Ultimately, I did take the katana to the police station, but they did allow me to remove all of the other pieces, the detachable pieces, from the blade and keep them, such as the tsuba, which is the crossguard, the handle, the sheath, etc. They only kept the blade itself, which is the dangerous part, I guess. What some people think I should have done because I have discussed this situation on some groups online. Some people think that when I found it, I should have just kept it to myself, that I shouldn't have notified anybody, the police or anyone else. And I received several different comments and suggestions and what people think that I did incorrectly or correctly. And of course, how I feel about giving up the sword is that I want to feel, my emotions want to feel disappointed and sad about it, because is it really fair that I should have to give up this katana? But there's something else that's a little bigger here. It's the law. I followed the law. So from the very beginning, I followed what the law is. Are you the type of person that believes in following the law or not? And of course, if the law told me to do bad things or wanted me to do something that would harm myself, of course I would not follow the law. That would be ridiculous. But this is not one of those situations. It is possible for me to have a real katana with a sharp edge. It just has to be a certain type of katana, and then I can register it and keep it. However, to find a katana and keep it and not notify the police is to break the law. And I'm not Japanese. I am a foreigner living in Japan. If I were to break the law in a situation like that, then I could get in a lot of trouble. I could even be kicked out of Japan. It's an illegal item, a dangerous weapon. If I were discovered with such a thing, it's very likely that I would get in a lot of trouble. So my advice to you is, if you find yourself in a similar situation, if for some reason you find an old gun or an old blade or old sword, I still think that the best course of action is to report it to the police. That is the law. If you want to stay on the good side while you're living here in Japan and get along in the community and in the country, then you should follow the rules. And that's just my opinion. I know some of you will still say, well, it's a shame, you could have done this or could have done that, and other people talk about other options, sending it to someone else or sending it overseas or whatever. I understand the desire to find a different way so that the katana, it does not go to the police and isn't destroyed. I understand that. But even those options were illegal. It would have been illegal for me to give the sword to anyone else, or to send it overseas, or to try to sell it to someone else. They don't even have to agree for me to turn it into a museum. That's a special case. If the police say no, you can't do that, then you have to follow what they say, because the local police station gets to make that decision. You might have an idea about what I could have done or should have done, and that's your own prerogative, that's your own business and your own idea, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, for me, it was about, this is my home, I live in Japan, I have no plan to move anywhere else, and I don't want to break the law over something so simple. I was able to keep all of the other pieces, and I have measured the blade so I can have another blade made to replace it. I can at least display it the way it used to look. For now, I have the main pieces and the measurements, and that's the way it is. And in a way, I feel like this is why the katana was calling to me. The soldier that it belonged to, which I believe is the same picture that I found hanging above the Butsudan, the Buddhist shrine in my house, I believe that this is his katana. And if that's true, if this is really his katana, then letting the blade be put to rest, it's what was meant to be done. And I'm okay with that. I was the one that it called to, and this is the outcome. So may the soldier and the katana both rest in peace. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.